Om Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Today, we are continuing with the topic, the spiritual warfare. The first part of that we did a few weeks ago, last month. So in that first part, we identified who are our enemies. This is not the warfare in the usual sense. It's a spiritual warfare. That means it's an internal warfare going on within our mind. It's not with an external enemy. The enemy is also within us. So the first part last time we identify who are the enemies and how do they get access to within us. The great teachers have listed 6 enemies, 6 main enemies. The first one is kama, that is desire, excessive desire or lust, krodha, anger, lobha, greed, moha, delusion, mada, pride, and matsarya, jealousy. These are the main enemies that we have. And the strongest and most dangerous is the first one, number 1, kama, excessive desire. All the others are product of this or derived from this. So Bhagavad Gita describes kama as mahashana, insatiable. We can never fulfill the desires. You fulfill one desire, immediately another one is already there to take this place. Then it's mahapapma, cause of great sin. And another adjective given in the Gita for this kama is dushpurena anala, the fire which is difficult to appease. It's very hard to quench this fire of desire. And the cause of all the violence that we see in the world, in society, all arise from this one enemy, this insatiable desire. And that's the root cause of the present war that is going on. If you go to the root cause, is desire. Desire for power, desire for wealth, desire for pleasure, all this excessive desire, when it becomes too much, that is the cause for all the trouble in the society, in the world. So how are we to defend ourselves? The same within on a spiritual seeker also, because we are dealing with spiritual warfare. We are not talking about the external warfare. We are talking about spiritual warfare, internal warfare. How are we to defend ourselves from these onslaughts of these enemies, these 6 enemies? So we need to chalk out very carefully a defense strategy. Earlier, in the last talk, we saw what are the first step is to prevent the enemy from entering the mind. Hence, we give great importance to shama, control of the mind, and dhamma, control of the senses. We get all the impressions from the external world through the 5 senses: ears, nose, eyes, tongue, skin, all bring in the impression from external world. And then they affect or color the mind. So first we have to stop that, control the senses. Imitation of Christ says, however, we must be watchful, especially in the beginning of temptation, because then the enemy is more easily overcome. If you can stop the enemy before coming in at the gate, then it is easy to overcome it. Then the enemy is more easily overcome if he is not suffered to come in at all at the door of the mind, but is kept out and resisted at his first knock. As soon as it comes to try to enter, stop it. Stop the enemy from coming inside. Now, where do they hide, and how can they flush them out from the hiding points? This aim of all spiritual struggle is to get over these enemies, these obstacles on the spiritual path. Obstacles, as Sri Krishna says, caused by Rajas and also Tamas. Tamas causes ignorance, dullness, delusion. Rajas causes restlessness and passion. So we have to overcome these by Sattva. Sattva brings in correct knowledge, illumination, harmony, cheerfulness, and happiness to the mind. But even Sattva does not take us to self-realization or God realization. We have to go beyond Sattva. According to Sri Ramakrishna, Sattva is the last rung on the ladder. When you are using a ladder to climb to the terrace. Step one by one, you go up the steps and you reach the last rung of the ladder, the topmost step. But you haven't reached the terrace. You have to go get out of that. Go beyond. Sattva is the last step or last rung of the ladder. You have to go beyond that to reach the terrace, to reach self-realization. So we have to go beyond Sattva also. Now, to overcome the negative thoughts related to excessive desire, anger, greed, etc., Patanjali gives us a method. According to Patanjali, to obstruct thoughts which are inimical to yoga, contrary thoughts should be raised. To obstruct thoughts which are inimical to yoga, contrary thoughts should be raised. That's the first step in purification on the spiritual path. If some harmful thoughts come, bring in contrary thoughts. So, and this is also termed as sublimation. You are not trying to suppress the thought, but you are giving it a new direction. You are giving it a higher direction, turning it in a higher channel. So we are learning to give the tendencies a higher channel. We find similar advice, just like as Patanjali has given, we find similar advice in the other scriptures also. For example, Mahabharata says, anger must be conquered by forgiveness. The wicked must be conquered by honesty. The miser must be conquered by liberality. And falsehood must be conquered by truth. Here, it is completely against the saying an eye for eye. No, it's not like that. Anger must be conquered by forgiveness. Wicked must be conquered by honesty. The miser must be conquered by liberality. And falsehood must be conquered by truth. Christ gives a similar teaching. Love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. Pray for them who despitefully use you. So it's always bring in positive thought to overcome, to wipe out the negative thoughts. So it's always, that's the teaching. And all the teachers give us the same teaching or similar teaching. Overcome the negative, obstructing thoughts and emotions with positive. And we have discussed so many times earlier that thoughts and emotions become stronger, powerful when we pay attention to them, when we show interest in them. So by paying interest, paying attention to and taking interest in positive thoughts and ignoring the negative thoughts, we are actually eliminating the negative thoughts. They slowly die out because they are not getting any nourishment. We are not paying attention to them. We are not taking interest in them. So they are not getting any nourishment. Slowly, slowly, they die out. Vedanta tells us that it's ignorance that has created the false ego. And the false ego, in its turn, makes us identify ourselves with it. Thus, we are hypnotized, actually. We are hypnotized to believe that we are limited human beings. Once in one of his lectures, when Swamiji was talking about the ego and its influence, so one questioner asked, so you are asking us to hypnotize ourselves? Swamiji said, you are already hypnotized. We are already hypnotized to believe that we are limited human beings. Now we have to dehypnotize ourselves. We have to dehypnotize and realize that we are not the limited human beings. We mistake the unreal, the evanescent for the real, the eternal. And as a consequence, we suffer. It's like mistaking the rope for a snake. That's a classical example of Vedanta. In the dim light, there's a piece of a rope lying there on the ground, and you mistake it for a snake. And you get frightened. You call some people that can rush with a stick to kill the snake, bring in the light, and you see it's up. After it's a piece of rope. But nothing has changed. Your perception changed. That's all. We are mistaking. In the same case with us also. We are mistaking the individual ego to be the real I of Atman. We are really the Atman, but we mistake that we are limited human beings. And identify with this psychophysical system and then suffer. So we are suffering because of our misidentification. Change it and we'll be free. So when we analyze, we can see all these enemies, these 6 enemies that we mentioned earlier, they also come up because of this identification. Because of identification with the body-mind as a result of the feeling of I and mine. Just look at anything. I desire, I am angry, or I feel angry, all because I and mine. And if something happens to people whom I feel is mine, I feel suffering. If somebody insults a person whom I consider as mine, or insults me, I feel angry. So everything, all these emotions that, or what we call the enemies, come only when there is a feeling of I and mine. Otherwise, we don't feel that. And these Vedantic teachers refers to this false identification as Maya. Maya is said to be of 2 types. Avidya Maya and Vidya Maya. Avidya Maya is that which makes us move further and further away from our real self. That's Atman. And it hides our true knowledge, the true knowledge of our, knowledge of our true nature. Vidya Maya is that which helps us come closer and closer to the real self, and by removing the veil of ignorance. Sri Ramakrishna calls this, the Avidya Maya, the unripe ego, and Vidya Maya, the ripe ego. Both are egos. So one is unripe, the other one is ripe ego. What does the unripe ego? Binds us more and more. Because it has the idea that, oh, I'm so important. I'm so powerful. I'm rich. I got all these people obeying me. I got all this wealth under my control. All I'm so, that is an unripe ego. And it takes us away from the real self. The real nature of the true I is not this. That's a false identification. Whereas the Vidya Maya, Sri Ramakrishna refers to as the ripe ego. That's also ego. Ripe ego gives rise to the idea that I am that ever free, ever pure Atman. In Sanskrit, if we say Nitya Shuddha, Nitya Mukta Atma. I am the ever free, ever pure. Nothing can tame me. Nothing can bind me. Because I am ever free, always. Not that I was bound for some time and then became free. No. I am eternally free, eternally pure. Nothing can tame me, nothing can bind me. That idea comes to us when we have got this ripe ego. That is the sign of ripe ego. So this type of reasoning is called as viveka, discrimination or discernment. And that's a very powerful weapon to fight with these enemies. And we have to be alert and watchful as to the thoughts that rise in our mind. Are they helpful, positive thoughts, or are they harmful, negative thoughts? We have to be always watchful. Swami Abhedanta, one of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, says, raise a wall around your mind by your discrimination. Do not allow the distractions of the external circumstances to enter your mind. So don't allow. How do you stop the distraction? Have a wall around your mind. And that is through discrimination, this reasoning. I am that infinite, ever pure, ever free Atman. Keep only such positive, helpful thoughts. Through self-analysis, we can detect the subtle desires and tendencies hiding in our heart. And once they are detected, we can separate ourselves from them. How do we do that? By practice. We say again and again to ourselves, as I have no aversion or clinging, no greed or delusion, no envy or pride, no duty or purpose, no desire of freedom. I am the soul of knowledge and bliss. I am Shiva. It is from Nirvana Shatka by Shankaracharya. Says, Name dvesharagau, name lobhamohau. Goes then ending with Shivoham, Shivoham. I am that infinite Shiva. I am that bliss, Chidananda Rupa. I am knowledge and bliss. I am Shiva. These things don't belong to me because I am that infinite Atman. And another attitude that rises from this Vidya Maya or ripe ego is, I am a child of God. I am a devotee of God. I am a servant of God. That also helps us. That's a product of Vidya Maya, but that helps us to get over this false identification. Maya and its product egoism is very hard to overcome. Sri Ramakrishna says it's like the shoot of a peepal tree or banyan tree. You cut it to the root and you think you have completely destroyed it. Just wait for a few days and you can see a new shoot coming up. Ego is like that. We think that, oh, well, I have overcome my ego. I have finished. There's no more ego. The very fact when we say I have no more ego, I have no more ego, that I comes up. As Ajayaprana Mataji also used to say, first person singular comes up, I. That is a sign of ego. But it's very hard to overcome. That is why Sri Ramakrishna said, keep the ripe ego. Either I am the pure Atman or I am a child of God. I am the devotee of God. I am the servant of God. That ego doesn't harm. Though it is an ego, we are still saying I, but it doesn't harm. So because Sri Krishna says in the Gita, Mama Maya Duratiya, my Maya is very hard to cross over. My divine Maya is hard to overcome. But then he says his divine Maya. Now, if it is his divine Maya, with his help, we will be able to overcome. And so Shri Krishna continues, Mamevaye prapadyante mayam etam tarandide. Whoever takes refuge in me overcomes it. So he gives the solution also there. My Maya is very hard to overcome. Yes, that's a statement. Then how do you do that? With his help. Because it is his Maya. If you take refuge in him, we will be able to overcome that. This taking refuge in God, surrendering ourselves to God, is another important and powerful weapon in our fight against these enemies. Instead of depending our own strength, our own egotism, we are asked to surrender ourselves to the divine, to look upon ourselves as an instrument in the hands of the divine. Say again and again, this body and mind of mine are instruments of the higher power. Very easy to say, but very hard to practice. When we try to practice properly, it's very hard. So Saint Teresa of Avila says, only those who are tried to practice know how hard it is. If you try to practice very, very hard, because we say, I have surrendered completely to God. Somebody says something to me, immediately my pride is hurt and I flare up. What happened to my surrender? Gone. We, in the Ramakrishna circles, we know how Girish Chandra Ghosh gave Sri Ramakrishna the power of attorney. Girish Chandra Ghosh, one of the close devotees, householder, he was a dramatist, and we can say he was a bohemian. He was drunkard. He used to boast that if I pile up the bottles that I drunk, it will reach the sky. So high. And there is no sin, no evil that I haven't committed. He used to say that. But then, at the touch of Sri Ramakrishna, he changed completely. One day, Sri Ramakrishna asked him to pray, meditate morning and evening. He said, no, I can't. Because there is no guarantee where I'll be morning and evening. All right. Then before your meals, you eat your food. Before your meal, say remember God. He said, no, I can't. Because I can't guarantee in whose company I'll be having my meals or when I'll be having meals, I can't. Because he hated discipline. He didn't want to have any discipline. He had completely undisciplined life. He did not like any discipline. But one good quality he had was extremely truthful. If he says he will do it, he has to do it. So he said, no, I can't do it. In the end, Sri Ramakrishna then said, before you go to sleep, remember God. No, that also I can't do. Then in the end, Sri Ramakrishna said, all right, give me the power of attorney. You don't have to do anything. He was very happy. Then I can live as I like. I don't have to worry about it. He has taken my responsibility. Sri Ramakrishna has taken responsibility. All right, given. But then after a few days, sitting in the room in front of Sri Ramakrishna, the devotees were talking and Girish said something, yes, I will do it. Immediately Sri Ramakrishna corrected. With the will of God, if God wills. So immediately, how can you say I will do it? Because you are given the power of attorney. You can't say I will do it. If God wills, I will do. So slowly, Girish found how difficult it is to practice giving the power of attorney. And later, after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, his wife died. And he said, I don't have the freedom even to weep for my wife. Only if he allows, I can weep. That much surrender is how hard it is. We say, oh, I surrender to God. I have given up everything. It's only lip service. Just to avoid practicing our spiritual discipline, we say, I have surrendered everything to God. It's very hard. That's why he said, if I knew how hard it is to give the power of attorney, I may not have done it. So these testimonies show us how effective tool self-surrender is in this battle. Then there are other tools that we can use. Yes, meditation, japa, prayer. They all help us in the fight with these enemies of spiritual life. Meditation is fixing the mind on the chosen deity. For a short period, when we are fixing the mind, our mind, all the disturbing thoughts are kept away. But in the early stages, meditation is nothing but an attempt at concentration. Real meditation is a continuous flow of thought. Your thought is flowing continuously towards the chosen deity, chosen ideal, without any break. But when we say we are meditating, we are trying to concentrate. The mind wanders away. We try to bring it back again. The moment you think that we have brought the mind back and is fixed on the chosen or your ideal, the mind has gone. It again and again, it's a constant struggle. But there is no other way. When Arjuna complained to Krishna, you are asking me to control the mind. It's like trying to control the wind. It's so hard. The mind is so restless. It is fickle. It's stubborn. He heard all that. He gave Krishna, listened quietly, and then said, yes, but you can, through practice and dispassion. Through dispassion and practice, you can bring the mind under control. In meditation, we try together. We try to fix the mind, and at the same time, whenever the mind goes, bring it back. Again try, do that again and again. Well, we say practice makes perfect. That's a saying. Through practice, it will happen. And here comes another tool to help, that is japa, the repetition of the divine name. We are asked to repeat the divine name, the name of God, while visualizing the form of God. They go together. Then the mind becomes a little calm. In the beginning, it is good to have the picture of the particular form of God that you like, so that we can concentrate. You look at the picture, concentrate the mind on that form, on the picture, and then close the eyes and try to visualize within the heart. And as we continue this practice, the form of God becomes clearer and clearer. In the beginning, when we try to close the eyes, we see as we saw in the picture, just a picture. Earlier it was picture outside, then we are seeing the picture inside the heart. But then as we continue this practice, the picture becomes more and more real. It becomes a living presence. And we are asked to repeat that along with the repetition of the divine name. Gradually, this will lead to meditation. Now, this repetition, the name of God, japa, is very important. Japa, or name of God, or the mantra, it's very powerful. It is not just a word. You think, what's that? Repeating the name of God. It wasn't just a name, a word. No, it's not just a word. And even ordinary words, we know how powerful it is. If just one of you called me fool, you can see the reaction. Did I? Yes, that's just a word. FOOL. Or you can say even just vibration in the air, that's all. Why do you react? But we do. How powerful it is. Swami Yatisharanda gives a very funny story. Once, a man came to the court with a defamation case. So the judge asked, what happened? What's the matter? Oh, he called me rhinoceros. When did it happen? 2 years ago. Now what happened now? I saw the rhinoceros only this morning. So we have to know the meaning of the word. Word is powerful only when it becomes meaning. When the meaning, we know the meaning, it becomes very powerful and it's very strong also. So we asked to think about the meaning of the name of the God. Well, what is the meaning of the name? The form of God. When I say any name, the picture, the person form comes to our mind. And they say name and form are inseparable. Nama and Nami are abheda, are inseparable. When you, as soon as you say a particular name of God, say Shiva, immediately the picture of Shiva comes to the mind. And sometimes they say the name is more powerful, weightier, heavier than God himself. There are stories in the Hindu mythology saying that name of God is more powerful, heavier than God himself. Just to give one story, there are stories in the with Rama and Krishna in this connection. Krishna's wife, one of them, her father was very rich, so she had a bit of arrogance or pride that she is very rich. Satyabhama, Krishna's wife, so one day, to show off that, she told Krishna, I want to weigh you in gold. That's the one custom in India we have. In the olden times, you know, the two scales were there. On the two pans of the scale. On one pan of the scale, the person sits. On the other pan, you put whatever you want to take the weight. So Krishna sat on one pan, and the other pan, Satyabhama, his wife, started putting all the gold that she had. A lot of gold. Nothing. The pan on which Krishna is sitting is not even raising a little from the ground. No, it's still on the ground. She brought in all her ornaments, all the gold that she could find. Then she borrowed from the other queens. Nothing's happening. In the end, she was so exhausted, she embarrassed, ashamed, didn't know what to do. Then Krishna's chief queen, Rukmini, she didn't have anything because she ran away. She ran away with Krishna, so she didn't bring any wealth from her family. She brought a tulasi leaf, basil leaf, and wrote on that Sri Krishna, and removed all the gold and put that leaf on the other pan. And the story is the pan on which Krishna was sitting just went up. So the idea is the weight, the name is much more heavier than God himself. So name is not just a word. Name of God is very, very powerful. That's just to show that. And so we are asked to use this name of God as a shield, as an armor around us, to protect ourselves from the onslaughts of the external world. Nothing can harm us if you cover ourselves with the name of God. It's a protecting shield. When we are in any circumstance where we feel threatened, repeat the name of God, repeat the mantra, and that will be a shield to protect us. All the world religions give importance to repetition of the name of God. Catholics have Hail Mary. The Orthodox Christians have the Jesus prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. The Sufis repeat Allah. Sikhs, Guru Nanak gave him great importance to repetition of the name. He says, countless are your names, O God, and countless are the places where you are present. He repeat the name. That's what Nanak used to say. And all the different sects of Hinduism, whether it is Shaivites followed by Shiva, Vishnu, or Divine Mother Shaktas, they all gave great importance to repetition of the name of God. Al-Ghazali, the great Muslim theologian of the 12th century, gave this instruction to those people who are initiated into their practice. He says, Let the seeker sit alone in some corner. Let him see to that nothing save God, the Most High, enters his mind. Then, as he sits alone in solitude, let him not cease saying continuously with his tongue, Allah, Allah, keeping his thought on it. At last, he will reach a state where the motion of his tongue will cease, and it will seem as though the word flowed from it. Let him still persevere in this until all trace of motion is removed from his tongue and he finds his heart persevering in the thought. Let him still persevere until the form of the word, its letters and shapes, is removed from his heart, and there remains the idea alone, as though clinging to his heart, inseparable from it. Nothing now remains but to await what God will open to him. If he follows the above course, he may be sure that the light of the real will shine in his heart. If you just remove the term Allah and put any other term of name of God, it's exactly the teachings given by the Hindus, the Vedantic teachers. It's the same, exactly the teaching that we see in the book Way of a Pilgrim, where the Jesus prayer is they asked to repeat. The same thing. Sit in a corner, see that nothing disturbs your mind, and repeat the name without ceasing. Let him not cease saying continuously with the tongue. And then, after you repeat that for some time, few days, few months, you will reach a state where the motion of the tongue will cease. But the repetition continues. Still persevere. Then all trace of motion is removed from the tongue. But the heart perseveres in the thought. Then still continuing, still persevering. The word, its letters, shapes, everything is removed from the heart. Only the idea remains. And it continues. In Sanskrit, it's called Japa. Without your doing the Japa, without your being consciously doing it, it goes on, even in the sleep. Swami Turiyananda says, even talking about this, he says, even now I am talking to you, but the Japa is continuing. It continues in the heart. Talking about this Japa, Sri Ramakrishna says, when you chant his name with single-minded devotion, you can see God's form and realize him. So he gives an example. Suppose there's a piece of timber sunk in the water of the Ganges and fastened with a chain to the bank. You proceed link by link, holding the chain. So you're standing on the bank of the Ganges. So you hold on to the chain and go forward link by link, holding to the chain, and you dive into the water and follow the chain. Now it is going to the deep into the water, but still you are holding the chain, you go forward. Finally, you are able to reach the timber. In the same way, by repeating God's name, you become absorbed in him and finally realize him. So we see how the divine name is helping us on the spiritual path. The divine name protects the aspirant against the rising of bad thoughts, evil thoughts, and innumerable seekers have attained spiritual progress through repetition of God's name. Holy Mother says, Japat Siddhi. You attain fulfillment through repetition of the name. With devotion you repeat, with concentration you repeat, that's enough. So, but we must have faith in the power of the name. We may say, oh, we see thousands of people repeating the name of God. We don't see any progress. Repeating mechanically without any interest, it may take long, long time. But you do it with sincerity, earnestness, and with full concentration, love for that particular ideal, you will go forward faster. And then we come to the last one of that category, prayer. By prayer, most people means asking something to God. Please give me this, give me that. It's a petition, always petitionary prayer. But there are a few who spontaneously pray and sing because their heart is full of God, full of love for God. So out of that love, overflow of love comes out in the form of prayer, praises, and songs. But in most cases, sense of misery, helplessness, force us to turn to the higher power for help and solace. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that 4 types of people pray to him. Artho, Jitnyasu, Artharthi. There are 4 types. Artha, those who are in distress. When you are in distress, we are suffering, we turn to God for help. God is the only help. Humans can't help anymore, then we turn to God. Then the second group, Jitnyasu, want to know, those who are seekers of knowledge. We want to learn about the higher things, we turn to God. Then Artharthi, seekers of wealth. I want to gain a lot of wealth. Of course, I strive, but I also pray to God. Then finally, the Jnani, the knower. Sri Krishna does not ridicule the seekers of wealth or those who are in distress praying to God. He says they are all noble because they are praying to God. Even though it is for their, because of their distress or because their desire for wealth, still he calls them noble because they are repeating, they are praying to God, turning to God. And the idea is, even though at present you are turning to God because of distress or because you are interested in becoming wealthy, slowly that will become selfless love for God. Because you already turned to God. Whatever be the purpose, you are turned to God, that will purify you slowly. That's why Krishna calls them noble. But a genuine spiritual seeker realizes how the mundane life is fleeting and takes refuge in God. And he recognizes the evils and impurities that stay in the mind and then turn to God. The God is the great purifier. Upanishad refers to that reality as the all-pervading, self-resplendent, formless, pure, untainted by evil. So the real seeker, genuine spiritual seeker, turns to that reality. And there is one essential quality that needed for success in spiritual life is faith. To attain goal of God realization or self-realization, we need to have faith. When we say faith, it is not mere belief. Just without faith and belief are completely different things. We start with some sort of working belief and then work towards faith. So Shankaracharya defines faith as a firm conviction based upon intellectual understanding that the teachings of the scriptures and one's spiritual teacher, Guru, are true and thus leads to realization of the reality. So it starts with intellectual understanding, a firm conviction based upon intellectual understanding. Conviction of what? That the teachings of the scriptures and the Guru are true. What the scriptures teach, what the but my spiritual guide has given the instruction. They are true. That conviction should be there. And that is based upon intellectual understanding, not just because somebody said, I believe. No, I reason it out. If possible, try, experiment with this, experiment it with that, and then come to get a conviction. And that will lead to realization of the reality. We need this unshakable faith that with the guidance of my teacher, my guru, and by following those instructions given by the guru, we will reach the goal. That conviction should be there. And for that, we have to have faith in ourselves. I'll be able to reach. I'll be able to do it. I'll be able to achieve it with God's help. I'm not standing on my strength, but with God's help, I'll be able to do it. I'll be able to reach it. That faith, that conviction should be there. We see in the Psalms, it says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? If armies in array should stand together against me, my heart shall not fear. Because the Lord is my light, my salvation. And again, another psalm says, the Lord is my helper and my redeemer. What is there to fear? It's not arrogance. It is not standing on one's own strength, but strong in the strength of God. So Swami Vivekananda says, the ideal of faith in ourselves is of the greatest help to us. If faith in ourselves had been more extensively taught and practiced, I'm sure a very large portion of evils and miseries that we have would have vanished. Throughout the history of mankind, if any motive power has been more potent than another in the lives of all great men and women, it is that of faith in themselves. Born with the consciousness that they were to be great, they became great. Faith in oneself. I'll be able to do it with the help of God. The success in spiritual life or spiritual warfare depends upon the spiritual caliber of the aspirant. Whether we will be able to succeed or not with all this effort, how far it depends upon the spiritual caliber. All people, all seekers don't go through the same battle. Some have very little struggle to go through. Highly advanced souls who have completely overcome all their worldly impressions because of struggles in the previous life will have very little struggle in this life. They may not feel any struggle at all, but others have to go through. And of all the people who go through this struggle, we have to remember only very few attain the goal. It's not easy, it's very hard. Very few attain the goal. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, Manishyanam sahasreshu kaschit etadisiddhaye. Etadamapi siddhanam kaschinmam veti tattvadaha. Among thousands of people, perhaps one may strive for spiritual life, for God realization. And among thousands who strive, perhaps one may know me in truth. So it's very hard. It's long struggle, hard struggle. But without this struggle, there's no gain also. So what about those who fail in the struggle? If only very few attain the goal, we can easily imagine that majority is going to fail. What about them? Those who fail to gain the goal? Arjuna raises his question. And Sri Krishna says as answer, he does what happened to the person who fails in the path of yoga, reach the goal of yoga. Krishna says, he does not meet with downfall either here in this life or in the hereafter. Know for certain that one who leads the path of virtue never goes to ruin. It's a promise Krishna is giving. Nahi kalyanakrit kaschit durgatim tata gacchati. Know for certain that one who treads the path of virtue never goes to ruin. It is not a complete failure. You have failed to reach the goal of self-realization or God realization. It's not a failure, complete failure. It's a temporary setback. You get up again, start again with renewed enthusiasm and energy, and go forward. As Swamiji says, arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. Continue with the practice, and we will reach there. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us in person and those joining us via Zoom. This week we had the yoga class on Thursday from 10 a.m. This coming Friday night, we have the spiritual evening discussion led by Gayatriprana. Next Sunday, 1st of April, we have the monthly talk on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which Hideouts will be giving that talk. We've got a donation plate there, donation box off the back. And we'll conclude now by listening to a guided meditation by Rev.Pravrajika Ajayaprana Mataji.
Bow down to thee, O thou pure existence, the one support of all the worlds. I bow down to thee, O thou pure intelligence, the one self of the multiform universe. I bow down to thee, the non-dual being, the giver of freedom. I bow down to thee, Supreme Brahman, limitless and absolute. Let us try to relax the body and the mind, gather our thoughts, and meditate upon the radiance of the divine being in the depths of our heart. The Supreme Being is the one source of all life, the one source of all strength, of all wisdom, of all love, and of all joy. The Supreme Being seems to be far away from us, but in fact, He is nearer than the heart. He is the innermost dweller of our heart. Let us close our eyes to all outward sensations and go inwards to find Him, seated there in all His glory and splendor, and waiting for us to turn our attention towards Him. Let us try to turn our inner eye backwards. Focus your attention on the center of your heart. We find there, emerging out of the gloomy darkness, which is the first thing that we see. When we look very closely and with faith and trust, we can see a tiny spot of glorious light becoming visible. Believe that you are seeing it. It is there. A thin beam of brightness coming from that spot of radiance rises up, becomes brighter and brighter, illumining the space within the heart. This bright spot of light is your individual consciousness. The ray coming from the spot of light, when we look closer, we can find that it connects the spot of light to the very bright star of ineffable radiance shining high above in the space of your heart. Above in the heart, in the space above in the heart, is a very bright star. And in the center of your heart is a spot of light. And a golden ray joins this spot with the star. The bright star is the cosmic consciousness behind everyone and everything in this universe. And also beyond it. Your individual consciousness is really a part and parcel of the universal consciousness, the Supreme Spirit, sovereign majesty. The extremely brilliant star above, the seat of absolute intelligence, and the luminous spot of light below, the seat of individual consciousness, are connected with each other by the beautiful ray, the state of constant awareness. That is our state. Our individual consciousness is always connected with the cosmic or universal consciousness. And we experience that truth in our heart only when we turn our gaze away from the world and towards the heart. The entire space in the heart is luminous with a golden radiance, a tiny radiance. Only these two entities, the bright, wonderful star, well-shaped star above, pulsating with universal consciousness, and the spot of light below, our individual consciousness, sustained by the luminous power from the star above. It's always present there. This meeting of the two. Always in a state of yoga. Universal consciousness feeding our individual consciousness. We are blind to it. Now in these few moments of silence and solitude, we become aware of this wonderful phenomenon that's always within the heart. The bright, very bright star above and the luminous spot below, connected by the ray of light. Let us concentrate on this phenomenon for a few moments. And feel the peace that already there. Experience the peace that is already there. Hare Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace.